Hi, and thank you for joining me. My name is Rob Scott, publisher at UC Today, and I'm really excited to present this year's UC Trends series. If you're a fan of UC Today, then you'll know that every October we run a special video series called UC Trends. In this insightful video series, I talk to senior executives from trailblazing vendors in UC, collaboration and CX, and discuss their perspective of the marketplace and what they predict will be the next year's game changers. We will also have some fun with them at the end of the main interview session with some quick fire questions to reveal a bit more about their personality and what makes them tick. Stand by for UC Trends 2021. The cloud communications market continues to grow and flourish as the traditional PBX fades into the background. Many communication service providers in this space are rapidly evolving their portfolios into full UC as a service stacks, whilst tackling the high demand for their services and fighting off tough competition from the tech giants entering the landscape. I'm delighted to welcome to the virtual studio Exponential-e's Senior Director of Public Sector and Unified Platforms, Afshin Attari. Afshin, it's great to see you today. Thanks for taking time out. I'm really excited to understand more about your year at Exponential-e, but also what's coming up in 2021. We're going to have a little bit of quick fire at the end, to ask you some questions for a bit of fun as well, so looking forward to that. But before we get started, I think best place to start would be to just find a little bit more out about yourself. Tell us about how you got into the UC space and what you do at Exponential-e, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity in meeting you and spending some time with you. So I've been with Exponential-e for 3.5 years. I joined Exponential-e to run our public sector or government business. So I'm responsible for our public sector business within Exponential-e. My role has expanded over that period to cover unified platforms, and what that specifically means is UC and contact center practice. And the reason behind that is, as we know, there is a great move in the market around unified comms, even before the most recent events which have taken place, which has really accelerated the consumption of such services, sort of customer intimacy, employee intimacy, the use of communications and IT, and the collaboration piece has always been a big theme in the market. To me joining Exponential-e, I have worked in other functions working with governments where big contact centers and unified communications has been consumed. So I've always had an interest around unified communications and contact center. The exciting part for me is how we translate technology into outcomes, and we deliver those outcomes into our customer world. And specifically, I've had a lot of experience around delivering such services into the public sector in the UK.
You've had a great year at Exponential-e. Congratulations on being the UC Award winner for Cloud Communications Provider of the Year. You've got a great story to tell, but let's start with how do you perceive the market? How have you been so successful? What's the secret sauce to growth in this marketplace?
I think the opportunity that we've embraced successfully in Exponential, most specifically over the last 7 months, is that we've helped translate what has been documented as potential benefits of use of unified communications and contact center on paper into a real world environment. And we were privileged, I would say, because we are a big provider into the health service. We hold 16% of the HSCN market around England. And when a call to action came from the NHS to say, we need help, because we need to be able to collaborate across GPs, specifically in Southeast London, where there's 206, where we have patients contacting, and we need to move it to the cloud to be able to divert calls, manage calls, and communicate. We stepped in, and what we did is we used unified communications as a cloud technology to deliver the outcomes for the NHS. So in answer to your question, I think the ingredients for success is really translating what technology can do in delivering outcomes to whatever vertical you're serving. Now, the example I gave you was in the context of the NHS. That could hold true in retail, that could hold true in banking. So the question is, how do we, as technologists, take our technology hat off and focus on business outcomes? That's the first point. The second point is around agility and innovation. I think one of the ingredients that resulted in our success in selling the NHS is that we responded very quickly. We spun up 4,500 users into the cloud within the span of 2 or 3 weeks. And let's not forget that sort of like most organizations, Exponential-e itself had changed its practices. We're 550 people. 550 people working from home. So if you think about it, we served that customer in a distributed environment where our technicians, our provisioners, our technical folk, our engineers were themselves working remotely, and they were accessing the cloud, and they were building these users into that environment. So the innovation around how we responded to COVID ourselves, and the innovation that we brought to the table around lateral thinking, around how we can solve problems for the NHS, has resulted in us being successful, but more importantly, has resulted in us delivering a service to the NHS at a time of need. And we're very proud around that.
So in terms of workplace trends, let's talk about what's really impacting your business and your customers. What are the standout kind of trends for you this year?
I think what I would say is that I mentioned earlier, I think the taboos have been broken. Most large corporates and organizations were, I would say, fixated in having employees in offices to deliver the business services that they're in. What we found as a result of force, because there was no choice, organizations have had to adopt this distributed working, home working, flexible working, forcibly, maybe initially reluctantly, but if you survey the employees, as if we've done, 95% of our employees through a survey have actually enjoyed working from home. They've enjoyed working from home, and our anxiety, like most organizations, around productivity output, I think has been ill-founded, because our employees are actually very productive as well. The commute every day, the time to spend with your family. And what we find is employees tend to spend more time. They log on earlier, they're more flexible, they log off later. So this whole dynamic of being in a central location to access technology to deliver service, I think it's been turned on its head. And what it's translated to is a lot of organizations saying, how do we embrace technology? How do we embrace cloud communications? And how do we embrace a new way of working to support a better work-life balance for our employees, but actually maybe possibly in certain cases reduce our overheads? Why do you need office space? Why do you need to be in a central location? Why do you need to all travel to central locations to make that happen? So that taboo, which was illustrated from a theoretical perspective for many years around key benefits, is actually really now translating into pounds, shillings, and pence, if you want to call it that, old terminology. It is translating into financial benefits that we can see. So over time, the office space and the real estate and how organizations work, I think, will be fundamentally affected. From a growth perspective, the intimacy and the communication will very much move to unified communications, contact center, and shared environments where we can share information and content in a distributed manner. So I think this trend is being accelerated, and I think it will continue over the next period, notably as we sit today. we're all embracing for wave 2 around COVID-19, which could result in another impact for another 6 months minimum. So that's how I see the trends accelerating and changing over the period.
Many organisations have seen the pandemic in stages, haven't they? And the initial stage being the real urgent stage, and the kind of second stage being more, okay, we've deployed everyone's up and running. How do we now kind of bed this in securely? How do we make this more sustainable? What kinds of challenges are your customers facing right now? And granted, we're still in this pandemic, but what's going through the minds of business leaders that you're working with?
Interestingly, what you find is, when you adopt a cloud communication platform, cloud is great. I think the visibility has really has focused on infrastructure. So if you're working from home and if you've got a poor internet connection, that's just going to adversely affect the experience that you have. So in Exponentially, the way we operate as a business, because we are a holistic service provider, we don't just focus on unified communications and contact center. We put a lot of investment in developing technologies of which we call SD Home. So software-defined home propositions, which will allow you to exactly cover the points that you raised through smart boxes at home, which will allow you to prioritize applications, manage application throughput, ensure that you're in a safe environment. So effectively, you extend the corporate environment into the employee's home through the use of SD-WAN technologies. So what we found is the barriers are not necessarily related to UC and contact. It's related to the underlying infrastructures that support that, which has accelerated our investment in those areas, and we are addressing those needs. So it's a matter of when you go through this due diligence phase, there are certain things that you know, and there are certain things that you don't know. And there are certain things that we didn't know, like most parties. But what I'm proud to say is that because of the way we operate and because of our innovation and speed, we're addressing those gaps very quickly. So the answer to that question is, how do we deliver a suite of services which allows the onboarding and use of distributed unified communications with a good end user experience which is secure?
So home working is a huge trend this year. Looking forward into next year, what do you see impacting the industry and your customers the most? Any kind of significant trends or technologies that you think will have the greatest impact?
I think artificial intelligence is one where we will see more movement towards, because if people are adopting the cloud and they are moving to UC in the cloud and they are adopting contact center, use of bots and AI will become more prevalent. So I think we will see an acceleration in the use of that technology. That's what I would say is there. And if you think about it, the whole concept of business travel, I think, will be changed. People getting on a plane, sitting on a plane for 6 hours to get to New York. The question is, well, do I need to? Do I need to get on a plane where I can communicate very easily from anywhere for the use of technology? So the whole pathways, I would say business pathways, which have been defined for many years, will be redefined. And the question for us as technology service providers is, with the new challenges, how do we respond quickly? You can't wait 6 months. When there is a need and there is a demand, you have to respond very quickly. So having the ability to respond in a speedy manner with innovative solutions in a safe environment, I think, are going to be the ingredients for success. And the other thing is around commercial flexibility. I think the consumption models that will underpin the whole of that service delivery will define take up and the adoption of such services into the future.
I was going to come on to buyer behaviour. Do you think buyer behaviour is going to change going forward? I mean, you mentioned convenience, maybe self-service. being a big one, or just being able to get it quickly. Do you think the buyer behaviour will change going forward?
I think the buyer behavior will change because the operational requirements which were defined previously will somewhat change. If I give you an example, if you're many contact centers were located in big hangar type areas where we have a lot of agents sitting there. You can be calling a credit card company now and you're speaking to an agent who's sitting at home. They could be a part-time mum, which actually does 3 hours a day. They log in for 3 hours, and they drop their kids off, and then they log off and they pick the kids up. So that in itself is going to change the operational requirements, and therefore, if we frame that from a buyer perspective, if you're a buyer for an organization, you'll be looking for technologies which can support those operational behaviors and those types of operations. Having an on-premise big switch in a location which could serve thousands will not be the answer. One, because it's not fit for purpose, and secondly, if you think about the COVID-19 issues, one of the issues was around access. You know, the proximity, the social distancing, etc., etc. So, would you want to have something which is located in a building somewhere where you can't access it? So, the whole of that definition and the whole of that operational need will define buyer behavior, which will create some challenges around service providers, but it's down to us to bring about innovative solutions to overcome that. And as we've seen over the last 6 months, you know, we've seen it in play, and this is where the accelerations come in. There wasn't a choice; there was an absolute operational need, and people have embraced it.
Afshin, some fantastic points made there, so thank you very much. So hold on to your seat, Afshin. We're going to do some quick fire questions now. So here we go. First job.
Graduate entrant into BT.
Favourite day of the week.
Friday.
Good answer. Would you rather speak every language in the world, or would you rather speak to animals?
Every language in the world.
What's the most inspirational book you've ever read and why?
Roots, which really demonstrates how human beings have responded to human challenge. And so that's very inspiring when I read it in my teenage years.
Oh, interesting. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Try to enjoy life and enjoy life for the moment it is now.
That's really good. If you could teleport anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I would go to Persepolis in Persia, old Persia, where Cyrus the Great and the Persian culture was many years ago, because I'm from Persian descent.
Voice call or video call?
Video call.
Dawn or dusk?
Dusk.
Do you believe in fate?
Absolutely.
What's worse, ironing or gardening?
Gardening.
Most watched movie ever?
Godfather.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Logical, direct, and non-emotional.
If you were given an all expenses paid trip to the north of England, would you take it?
I would, absolutely.
Correct answer. Who is your greatest inspiration?
My father.
Type, touch or speak?
Speak.
Elvis or the Beatles?
Absolutely the Beatles.
Say good day, mate, in an Australian accent.
G'day, mate.
If you could go back in time for a day, where would you go and why?
I would go to Persepolis in Asian Persia because that's where my heritage is.
Which new technology will transform the future?
Artificial intelligence.
And your greatest achievement ever?
managing to complete 2 master's programs whilst working.
Well done. So Afshin, it's been great to see you today. Thanks for taking time out. Huge congratulations on the year, and I wish you all the very best for 2021.
And thank you for your time. It's been very informative, and we're privileged to be in this position, very thankful, and thank you for your support.